Highly successful individuals are always focused on what's next, but they often don't take time to reflect on their journey and how far they've come. I'm Craig Heatherly, host of the Path Less Traveled podcast, where we dive into the journeys of extraordinary leaders. Their success rarely follows a straight path, and that's what makes their story so remarkable. Now let's dive into this week's episode after a brief message from our sponsors. Looking for top talent in tech or professional fields? Avero Talent connects businesses with exceptional candidates, specializing in tailored recruiting solutions that match the right skills to your team's needs. Whether building a team or searching for a tough-to-fill position, Avero Talent delivers the expertise you need to hire smarter, faster, and with more confidence. Let us help you find your next star employee.
Success changes the game. Your business is growing. New opportunities, ambitious goals, greater impact. But growth brings complexity. More people to lead, more moving parts, less time and space to think and connect. And when leaders feel that strain, teams do too. At Cressy Leadership, we help leaders navigate those challenges. Through individual coaching, group training, and our Leadership Academy, we build the skills and strengthen the connections that make growth sustainable, helping teams communicate openly, tackle challenges together, and stay aligned on what matters most. Cressy Leadership. Envision what's possible.
Welcome to the Path Less Traveled podcast. This week we feature the President of Bethel University, Dr. Dee McDonald. Dee, welcome to the show.
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, excited to have this conversation. I mean, you are 146 days into the job here at Bethel University. I did the math this morning. You know, being in higher ed myself for 11 years as a college basketball coach, recognize in key leadership positions that there's a 7-day focus, a 30-day focus, a 150-day focus when you first take a job. I guess as you look back on your time here thus far, what did you want to get accomplished? What was your focus? And I guess, how's it going?
Yeah, that's a great question. 146 days is not very long. And in the scheme of things, it is an eternity. It's like dog years, right? So it's actually 7 times as long as how it feels. But I think one of my focuses has been in reading sort of the first 90 days and trying to really grasp onto what are some early wins. How do we set culture? How do we build trust really quickly? Because I think for a senior leader, especially in the top seat, building trust is really vital with the people of the organization because they don't know you. Mm-hmm. If you're an internal candidate, that's a little different. But I'm coming from outside. Right. 99% of the people here have never met me before. Yeah. They don't know me. They haven't worked with me. And so they're like, who's this guy? And all these ideas and energy and all that stuff, and will it work? Right. So, but trust takes time to build. Yeah. And that's the first T, really. There's 3 T's, and that's time, transparency, and then telling the truth. So I would call myself an authentic leader. Like, I really believe in authenticity and just being who you are every day, every minute. And what really the first 90 days and even the first, let's say 150 days that we're almost there, for me is really stacking good days. And so the people that I've talked to in my circles and sort of mentors and coaches say, you're going to want to do everything all at once because you want to fix all the problems. And every organization has problems. It just depends on whether you get handed the problems and you don't get to determine them, or whether you have the good problems, like, too much money, too many people, too much marketing to do, right? Mm-hmm. These are good problems to have. Too much popularity. These are great things. This is where we want to get to. But what we have to really deal with right now is we've got to deal with those issues, but we can't solve them all at the same time. And that's really hard for me because I want to get this thing running, like not just up and walking or even crawling. I want to get it running and humming. Yeah. And you can't do that right away because organizations don't work that way. It takes very short time to fail or get into a bad place, and it takes a long time to get healthy and get into a good place. So I'm just keep reminding myself, and I've got other people that remind me, like, hey, take your time. It's going to take some time. It's not going to turn overnight. So stack good days. And as you begin to do that, you'll start to see gradually you build and develop that trust because other people start to see it too. And things begin to turn. So that's really what I've leaned into, and kind of developing and cultivating a plan, which is the first 90 days book kind of leads you to do, create some categories, and then have a plan going into it. Don't just try to do it all at once, because that's the temptation.
A big thank you to Senior One Care for sponsoring today's episode. Founded in 2006 by Carl and Kyle Bossing, this family-owned business has provided compassionate in-home care for nearly 2 decades. If my family needed a caregiver, I'd call Kyle. With 6 Indiana locations, they give you the peace of mind while your loved ones receive the care they deserve. Learn more at senioronecare.com. There's this belief that we'll get the flywheel going, but it's at what point, right? And it's the appreciation of the daily consistency of effort, discipline, and just doing the right things and really meeting the moment, whatever the moment requires. And that's different, right, throughout the course of the year.
Yeah.
This authenticity, has it always been just your focus, your upbringing, or as you've moved more into leadership positions, you've recognized the need for an authentic leader?
Yeah. I think it hasn't always been me. I think high school, college, I think there were people that I looked to and saw how do they do it, so that I'll do it that way, right? Maybe they were very successful. Maybe they were popular. Maybe they were older than me. Maybe they were just like close to me, right? Where you just notice. There's a lot of reasons. Proximity is a major factor. But I did all of my doctoral research for my PhD. I did it on authentic leadership, authentic followership, which is its own category. Fascinating, actually. That actually, when I took that class on followership, it totally like revolutionized how I think about leadership. And so I did authentic leadership, authentic followership, and then its relationship with organizational commitment within Christian higher education. So that was my PhD, my dissertation. And the more I started talking about and learning about authenticity, it's also what Gen Z and our young people right now are looking for.
Yeah.
They can sniff out fake a mile away. And I've just begun to be comfortable with who I am. Like, I'm bald. I have no hair. It is what it is, right? So I've got to be comfortable with that. I'm not the best at some certain things, and I've got to own that, right? Because it's just not how God made me. I'm not great at lots of different things, but for me is God has brought me to this point, and he wants me to be exactly who he created me to be, not somebody else. I don't need to be, I love Craig Groeschel. I love Tim Keller. I love John Maxwell. I love like all these leaders or gurus or thinkers or whatever, right? Simon Sinek. I constantly saying stuff, from him, like just thinkers, but I can't be them. And when you try to be somebody else, you end up not being who God created you to be. And so that authenticity piece is really important for me, because I think that's what God desires of us, to be exactly who he created us to be, and to really lean into that and to figure that out and to grow that through our relationship with him as we move forward. So authenticity is really important to me. And I would say pride, and probably trying to, model or wear a mask or be somebody I was not early in my career, which is very common for people. And when you're in your, teens and 20s, you're trying to figure out who you are, who you want to be, what's my image? What do people think of me? All that stuff. And at the end of the day, you start to realize that it doesn't really matter that much. And you actually need to be who you were created to be. And so that authenticity for me is just actually living into that and trusting that God has brought me to it. So now he's going to also bring me through it. And he's equipped me for all these different pieces.
I want to spend a little bit more time in something that you just said there. Earlier, you mentioned the PhD in organizational leadership, I believe.
Yep.
And then 3 components of that: authentic leadership, authentic followership, and then organizational commitment. But you said followership. You didn't use the words blew my mind, but changed the game in a sense.
Yeah.
Let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. Followership, I took a class on it in my PhD work. I had never heard of it. Most people probably even that are listening today have never heard of it. They're like, oh, yeah. We're leaders. Everybody's a leader. We've heard that since we were kids, right? Everybody's a leader. You were wired to lead from your seat, lead up, lead well, lead strong, like all these things. Like everybody says everybody's a leader. I don't think they are. Like there are some people, my mom would sooner crawl under a rock than lead. She doesn't want to be out front. She'll do anything for anybody. She'll make you look good, but she wants to be in the wings.
Yeah.
And she's like, you know what? Sign me up for following. That's okay. And so as a person of faith, I'm like, well, we're called to follow Jesus. And that's how we learn how to follow, but we're called to be followers first. And I think you've also got this leadership principle that a lot of people believe, like you have to learn how to follow before you can learn how to lead. And I think that holds true sometimes. It depends whether you subscribe to great man theory, whether you're built for this. You're just wired to lead. You think of the George Washingtons. You think of some of these people that are our founding fathers. You think of some of these just great leaders that they led from the time that they were born. And you think of that, and then you think of traits theory, which is anything can be learned or developed. And as I got into this followership, it was like people don't just follow leaders blindly. They don't. There's something that draws them in and gets them to engage and say, I'll allow you to lead me. And I think when we start to realize that as leaders, we start to realize that people give their permission to be led. That's the general basis for followership.
Ooh, that's good, yeah.
People give their permission to be led. Then we start to lead differently because I'm not like, that's fine. If you don't want me to lead you, that's great. But we're going to get to a point where we're going to have to be on the same page to accomplish the mission. And if this isn't going to work, then we have a necessary ending coming very quickly down the pipe. Mm-hmm. And so followership, again, totally transformed the fact that you're not just a positional leader. You're not just a president, a vice president, a CEO, a CFO. People don't just lead you. And so even when I came in, one of the examples I would use would be, we've all been in those corporations or those businesses or those environments where there's a nickname for the leader, right? Could be your director, could be the president, could be whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I've been at plenty of those organizations. I've used lots of those nicknames, right? Sometimes they're funny and clever. Sometimes they're really mean and hurtful. But they're like, well, what do you want to be called? Right? Dr. Dee McDonald, right? So they're like, do you want President McDonald? Do you want Dr. McDonald? And I was like, well, what do you want to call me? That's that authentic followership, that authentic leader. Because I said this, I actually said this out loud. I said, you're going to call me something when I'm not there. If it's the same thing you call me when I am there, this is going to be great. But you tell me what you want to call me. So they're like, what about Dr. D? That's awesome. And I was like, great, love it. Let's do it, Because if I say, call me President McDonald or Dr. McDonald, very formal, like they're going to push hard against that. They'll be like, yeah, we're going to come up with something a little more interesting and fun for us, right? Let's poke fun at that. So I'm like, what do you want to call me? Just so that authenticity piece and understanding that like, I don't control that. They give their permission to be led, and they're going to call me what they're going to call me. And if we're on the same page, then we might actually be able to do something special here. So that's the followership idea. Yeah.
I've had fun being around you, the few encounters that we've had up to this point. And I guess as you think about what's enjoyable, what's exciting, what's fun about right now, November, whatever the date is, 24th of 2025, here for you and your life and your family. I guess what are you most excited about right now?
The thing I'm most excited about is, and this is something that God really taught me when we moved from Florida to Minnesota. So we moved here from Minnesota. We were there 3 years. But when we were in Florida, he planted this thought and this seed in me that I want to do something in and through you that you can't do by yourself, that only I can pull off. And so we planted a church. We actually did a micro church in our house. And I was like, wow, I don't know how we would do that on our own, right? I was a VP, full-time job. Both kids are in sports. My wife is working full-time. And we just figured it out and we did it because we wanted to. We cared. And I think that planted the seed of the presidency. I knew that would happen eventually. It was just a matter of where and when. But it planted this seed that you can't control what happens. You can try, and it's going to go poorly. Or you can say, I'm going to give God all the credit for what he does. And no matter what, this is something that only he could pull off. And so we're leaning into that right now. Bethel is an incredible institution. There's great people here. There's great students. There's great potential. There's great bones. I've been saying there's great bones. You look at a house and you're like, everything's there. It's a great foundation. The walls look good. It's well built. We just need to begin to renovate and rejuvenate and modernize it. And so that's something that I'm most excited about, is that even if I did everything I could and pulled as hard as I could and ran as fast as I could and pulled all the levers and pushed all the buttons and did all that, that I could not make this work on my own. So only He can actually make this work and do what He's capable of doing. And that's kind of turn this around, right? To begin shifting those revenue drivers, to begin drawing students and donors and people that engage and care to this place. I mean, I can do it, and they're going to hate me because I'll be trying too hard, right? But it's God's hand and God's favor that really gets us where we need to be. And then my responsibility is to give Him all the credit. So that's sort of what I'm excited about. And we've had, I mean, from our board of trustees, I mean, they doubled down. Like, they gave sacrificially at board meeting this fall. And it was incredible. It was overwhelming, to be honest with you, because they said, you know what, you're right. We're going to actually lead the way. We're not just going to say, yeah, you should raise money. We're going to give first. And I think that's what leaders do. That's great leadership from our board. And we've got some great people that are sacrificing and giving and doing what they feel like, okay, there's something special going on here. And so that's what I'm really most excited about, is that Bethel and this transformation that's happening and going to continue happening is something that only God could do. And we're going to give Him all the credit for it.
Yeah, I like that, as you've woven the two together, as it's, the only way that this is going to be its best version is through, right, His influence and His fingerprint upon it through you. It's like the prayer of God, increase and let me decrease.
Yep.
And then also from a leadership point, it's like, how do you give credit and take the blame? I think that's one of the most challenging parts of kind of shifting towards this leadership. And for some situations, it may just be one chair over. To be at the point of, no, I'm going to take it and I'm going to give out the credit. I guess, how has that gone for you over your time leading? And what advice would you give to other leaders that may want all the glory and all the fame and all the accolades and the impact that it has on your people?
I would say, if you want all the glory and all the accolades, you're not really a leader. You're a king, or you're a tyrant at some level. Not always a terrible thing, but if you want all the glory and all the accolades, it's just not going to work. And so I've always taken a coaching philosophy on this. A lot of my leadership principles are from coaching or from sports. I played baseball all the way through college, and then I wanted to be a college baseball coach. So I've just read just ad nauseum, right? Yeah. Basketball coaches and successful baseball coaches, and what do they do? How do they do it? And one of the principles in coaching is, when we win, they get the credit. When we lose, it's my fault, right? That's what good leaders do. Yeah. They give away the credit, I think. And I think there's an inherent humility that comes with that, where, you know what? Hey, I get paid to do this. And so we're going to make sure that the people who are on the totem pole, they get the credit for the hard work that goes in. And then I get the blame because I got big shoulders and I can handle it, right? Or I get to wear the mantle, right? With great power comes great responsibility, the infamous Peter Parker quote, right? But that's what I've always said. And I think spiritually, that's really connected with me too, where, God gets all the credit, because ultimately, when you can't pull it off, when you come to the point where you realize, I can do this on my own, even if I were to be like everything lined up, then you start to realize, okay, now I've got to really double down on, who am I? What am I doing? And my relationship with God has just exploded because of that. Because it also relieves you a little bit, right? Because if you're trying to do it all on your own, you're just going to fail time after time. And what a miserable place to be. And where instead you can actually come and say, hey, I screwed up, or I missed this. I'll say that in cabinet when we're meeting with our senior leaders. Yeah, that's me. That's on me. That's my bad. I made a bad call. I've done it before. I'm going to do it again. It's going to happen, right? But now we got to go back and look at the tape, because the film doesn't lie, right? And then we got to say, okay, yep, that's my bad. That loss is on me. Now we got to figure out how to fix it and move forward and win the next one. So you've got to have, there's so many connections between sports and coaching and leadership, and just figuring out, how do we win the next, whether it's a half or a quarter or play, right? Let alone a game or a season. I think I definitely take that philosophy as I go into leadership and I deal with people. I'm not afraid to admit that I messed up or it was wrong, and that we've got to figure out how to work together and to accomplish a common goal. Because that's ultimately the definition of leadership, is getting a group of people to accomplish a goal or to get to a certain destination. It's that simple, really, when you think about it.
Well, I want to shift the focus more towards specific leader. And we've been talking leadership already. We jumped in the deep end.
Sorry about that.
No. The title of the podcast is The Path Less Traveled. And when you think about that title and just your journey from LaPorte to Illinois to, I think, Minnesota, Florida, back to Minnesota. When you think of that title, I mean, what comes to mind?
Yeah, I think leadership isn't for the faint of heart. Especially right now, higher ed, nobody wants to be a president at colleges and universities. Somebody told me the other day, I was at a get-together speaking somewhere, and they said there's 110 open presidencies.
Oh,
and
wow.
just no one wants to do it because it's miserable, right? You can't make anybody happy. There's no finish line or definition of winning, right? And thankfully I've come out of enrollment and marketing. So, it's like, how many students is enough? Always one more than you have. It's like how much money or power or whatever. You're like, this is miserable. Yeah. You always start again at zero, so it's hard to build momentum and develop momentum into those tasks. But the path less traveled, I think that's the leadership title. I think it's the believer title. God never promised it would be easy. He just promised it would be worth it, right? And you look at some of the references throughout Scripture, and you look at Paul, and you look at even, some in the Old Testament, a lot of the prophets. You look at Peter, you look at all the disciples outside of Judas, right, were killed for their faith. Like, I haven't been killed, so I feel like I'm in an okay position, and I shouldn't be complaining, Yeah. So I think that's, for me, the path less traveled it's the believer's journey. It's the leader's journey. And ultimately, when God calls you to that, you just have to say, okay, it can be lonely. It can be miserable. There's a lot of pressure. There's all those things that come with it. But you also have to embrace it and just say, it's not all on me at the end of the day. And when you realize that you have help, that you have the helper or your best friend next to you, and even my wife, she's my biggest fan. She is my cheerleader. She's always encouraging me, praying for me. I don't know how she does it. I don't know why she does it some days because I screw up and I'm a bonehead just like everybody else. But she gives grace and she turns the page quicker than I do a lot of the times. So when you start to realize it's not all on you and there are people around you that care or that support or that can help, then it starts to kind of, maybe the path gets a little more enjoyable because you realize you're not on it alone. Yeah. And for me, that's probably one of the biggest pieces. Is this the path less traveled, but there's a lot of other people on it.
And to expect some challenges, some trials, some valleys along the way. That's good. Correct me if I'm wrong, state champion, Port High School baseball. Yep. You mentioned wanting to be a college coach. Yeah. Maybe that you felt as though that was your calling. I guess I want to ask the question of, when did you know that being in a president role was your calling? Just tell me about that time, that experience, and just how you maybe arrived at that.
So I always have loved sports, baseball. I would say I've been a natural leader, especially on the field. I was a catcher. So that position itself just lends it to being a field general is kind of the terminology they use, right? Yeah. And you've got everything in front of you and you're like, hey, over a couple steps, we're going to go with this pitch. We're going to go with this player. We're going to go with this count. You can really, you're the coach on the field in a lot of ways. And so I would say I had a lot of natural leadership abilities. But when I got out of college, I said I was going to get into coaching. And the first job that came along that somebody talked to me about was actually in admissions. So as I'm processing through, okay, I want to be a college baseball coach. I know I'm going to have to recruit if I'm a college baseball coach. And if you can recruit well, you can have a pretty doggone good team. Maybe this is a good deal. So I took a job in admissions as an admissions counselor, and I thought, I'll learn the science.
Yeah.
right? And some of the art, and do 2 or 3 years here, and then I'll get into a GA position, an assistant coach position, and work my way up, get exactly where I want to go. I'm very, I would say I used to have that sort of ladder climbing mentality of just trying to make sure that you're taking the next step, you're taking the next step, taking the step, which is nothing wrong with, right? If you have the right heart posture, but it can get very out of control very quickly when you get a lot of money involved and you get a lot of like power or pride or those kind of things.
You're
right?
climbing the ladder and you find out, oh, it's leaning against the wrong wall.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So I got into admissions, and it was just I was naturally good at it. I hit all my goals the first year as one of the top performers because I just really care about people. But when it comes right down to it, if you care about people and you can communicate and deal with people well, you can probably be successful at anything. And so I was a couple of years there, and then I was there 10 years actually. And there was really nowhere for me to go. And I felt like God was pushing me to do something more and that I was built for more. So I started looking around and eventually moved to that next stop in Minnesota as chief enrollment officer. But I skipped assistant, associate, director, executive, all that. I skipped all that like middle management leadership and just went straight to cabinet level chief enrollment officer. So it was kind of crazy, but I think it was how God had wired me. And I stepped right into that, and he gave success and favor pretty quickly. But through that, I have this very high regard for the role of the president. I don't think you can be a president if you just want to be a president. You probably could at some level, but it's not something in my mind, especially at Christian colleges, right? I think you have to be called and appointed by God himself. Like, you can try really hard and never get it. Or you can try really hard not to get it, and if he has it for you, you're going to be a president. And so in 2016, I was having lunch. I was about to transition from Minnesota to Florida to the school there. They were pursuing me and wanted me to come in and build out their graduate school, and that was a different area for me that I never really worked in, and felt like that was going to be a really good learning opportunity to kind of build my toolbox. And I was having lunch with the president, and he said, "What's your plan?" And I hadn't really ever been asked that. I was thinking about it, but I hadn't really ever been asked, like, what is that look like? So I said, I need to get my PhD because I've got to be academically credible to faculty and within higher education. And then I said, probably spend the next, 10 years or so figuring out if God's called me to be a president. And that seemed like a reasonable plan to me. And he looked at me and he said, well, it's just us in his office over lunch and we're just talking. And he's trying to keep me there, counter offer and figure out whatever. But this is just a very heartfelt God moment. And I said, spend the next 10 years trying to figure out if I'm going to be president. I'm called to be a president or not. So I had this very high regard for the role of the president. Right. And he said, Dee, there's no doubt in my mind that God has wired you and you are called to be a president. Stop doubting that. And it was like this 2x4 to the back of the head moment. Okay, now what am I going to do with the next 10 years, right? And so as I went through, it was like, okay, God has put this in my heart. And it was sort of a prophetic God moment that I was like, okay, now it's a matter of when and where, but I've got to make sure that I'm ready when that time happens, right? We were talking last week about my son in basketball, win the wait, right? So I've got to make sure that I'm ready from an academic standpoint, from a leadership standpoint. And we see that all the time. Failure comes when your character and integrity are not up to the standard of the position that you're appointed to, right? I mean, Joseph, look no further than Joseph in the Bible, right? He became Pharaoh's number 2, but after being in prison and captured by his brothers, and you go boom, but his character and integrity were always ready to meet that moment. In fact, they landed him in prison because of that, because he would not with Potiphar's wife. And so then you move to the next and you're like, yeah, but he was always ready to be number 2 in command in Egypt and really save the world. So you say, well, if my character and integrity are ready to meet the moment, then it's just a matter of when and where, but I'll be ready because I've done the work and then God has appointed to the place and the time.
So meeting the moment, what's this moment in your life right now require of you? And maybe even your family. You mentioned your wife, and you now mentioned your kiddos. What does the moment require of you right now that maybe you weren't expecting or your family was expecting? I guess taking on a new role like this, making another move, it's different though.
It is. One of my friends said when he went from a VP level to a president, he said he thought it would be like going from a cat to a tiger, right? You stay in the same species. So what I didn't realize is like going from a cat to an elephant. Like it's completely different. It's not just more and overwhelmingly more. It's totally different. This moment it's definitely a faster pace. We're running really fast, but it's good. And I'm trying to show up for my kids and make sure I don't miss any of their games. And I expect that of my employees too. I expect that of everybody here. Number one is family. And we want to make sure that if your kids are sick or if something's going on, that there's not even a question. It's go. We'll figure it out on the back end. And so trying to really be present with my family, trying to be present with my wife. And that's been one of the harder parts, is trying to make sure that she's connected to my calendar and that we're where we need to be together when we need to be together, as a tag team. And then I'm where I need to be when it's just me, and that the kids are taken care of and, she's getting where they need to be. So we're also living on campus, which adds a fun element to that as well. But we just really feel moved. That is not just what Bethel needs, but what God's calling us to do, that we need to be here and do life with faculty, staff, and students. And so that's what we're doing. We're living in a duplex, half of it anyways. And it is cozy. It is intimate. I think we will look back someday and talk about how this is one of the hopefully most fun times of our family life. But it's just so different that there's no way to prepare for it. And we're trying to just meeting the moment. We're trying to meet the moment and find positivity in the midst of a lot of stressful things, but that's okay. Hard things tend to be worth it. And so we just keep reminding, maybe this is an example to our kids, that it's okay to work hard or to struggle or to have to figure stuff out. That's the joy of the journey. And unfortunately, that's probably the path less traveled as well, right? Yeah. People don't want it to be hard. They don't want to have to work for it or to wait for months or years for something to really come to fruition. But that's where I think that's where the ultimate satisfaction is that you stayed the course, right? That faithfulness piece. That's really what we want to be known for. We want to be known for faithful people, my wife and I, and we want our kids to be faithful people. We want to stay when it's hard. We want to double down when it seems impossible. And we just want to be those people that just believe, sort of the force of will people, where you're like, no, it's going to happen. We're staying here because this is where we're called and this is what we're going to do. And we're just going to keep rolling and walking forward.
This episode is brought to you by Mosier Consulting, the powerhouse behind some of the most innovative technology solutions in Northern Indiana. For 30 years, Mosier has been delivering best-in-class solutions. If you're a leader in your company, Mosier is your partner in progress. With deep expertise in analytics, AI, managed services, Microsoft, IT savings, and strategic consulting, they don't just support your tech, they elevate your entire business. Mosier Consulting, technology experts, real results. Visit MosierIT.com to learn more. I've got two questions for you as we start to close out this interview.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of tread left on the tires, in my opinion.
Yeah.
What leadership pitfall would you encourage a younger leader to avoid? Or what advice would you give to a younger leader that maybe you wish you would have received at a younger age? When I ask those two questions, kind of morph them into one and whatever response you want. But yeah, what advice would you give?
I would say something that I'm still trying to figure out is, and I think this happens with everybody, is the rhythms of life and trying to find a rhythm that works for the season I'm in.
Yeah.
Right. So that I can stay consistent, because, the wind and the waves, they just keep crashing. It doesn't matter what, when, where, all that, they happen. But what are the rhythms of life? And I was listening to a podcast yesterday with Craig Groeschel, and he was talking to Jim Miyato, who is Compassion International, or Compassion's CEO or president or whatever it is. And he was talking about his schedule and when his day actually starts at night when he goes home from work. And so he said, I take more of the Hebrew look at the way my schedule is so that when he gets up for work, that's more the middle to end of his day. But he's rested well so that he can meet the demands that's being asked.
Yeah, it's good.
And so just the rhythm and the seasons of life and when to rest and to Sabbath and to retreat, because I'm not good at that. I wouldn't say workaholic's a dirty word, but I believe in something so much. I believe in Bethel University so much that I'm willing to sacrifice myself and some sleep or whatever that might be to be able to help find success, right? And sometimes that gets out ahead of us and you need to actually retreat and you need to be able to refuel and kind of get the clarity, right? Jim yesterday was saying on the podcast, he makes no important decisions after, I think it was 3:00 because I'm spent, mentally.
Yeah.
And I think there are weeks or months or even days where you need to just like back up and say, I need to think about this or I need to sleep and then let's come back to it tomorrow. And I'm bad at that because I'm like, let's take the hill.
Right.
We got to move.
Yeah.
We got to do this. Come on, God is with us, right? And sometimes he's saying, just relax. You need to rest and you need to think about this and process it.
Yeah, I'm currently in the process of trying to adopt the thought of let's delay the yes and delay the no as much as we can. Some moments require the yes or the no in the moment, but how can we delay that a little bit more? My last question to you, and I'm going to tie a lot of this in. You won't be outworked. We've talked about that.
Yep.
You just mentioned, let me go take the hill. Let's go.
Yep.
And then also earlier, one rung at a time, climbing the ladder and wanting to achieve and just wanting to win the day. You've achieved a lot in your young time. What are you most proud of as you look back? What are you most proud of?
I would say I'm most proud of my wife and kids. Number one. I'm most proud of the faithfulness of God. That should have been number one, but it's right there. That's top. And I can't even emphasize that enough. Just the faithfulness of God. And then the people that I've been able to work with, the teams that I've been able to be a part of, it's been super fun. They've created success for our team. As you move into leadership, like you don't realize like you don't have a direct impact on the bottom line anymore. You have to motivate or influence right. And so you've got to figure out how do we get the right people at the right time to do the right thing. And I've had the opportunity to work with some incredible people that are way smarter than me, that are way better at pretty much everything than me, but we've been able to work together and achieve some pretty incredible results. And that's what I would say. My family, faithfulness of the Lord, and then the people that I've been able to work with and get to know and learn from in a lot of ways.
Well, Dr. D, you've had the microphone. You get the microphone for the final thoughts here. Go ahead, close us out. And this could be anything about your final thoughts on Bethel University, on leadership, on just anything. The floor is yours. Go ahead and close this. Yeah, I know. Risky on my end. No, go ahead.
That's dangerous. Yeah. I'm also a pastor and a president, and so I could preach for a while, or we may have to take up an offering here. I don't know, If you look at your screen, there's going to be a QR code, and we love you to invest at Bethel University. I'm joking, but I'm also serious because, anything helps. But yeah, man, I'm so excited to be at Bethel. And I grew up knowing it is Bethel College and it's now Bethel University. And it's just such a special place. Everybody that I have ever met that's associated with Bethel has been an incredible human.
Right. Yeah.
And that doesn't happen by accident. A lot of people would say it's a hidden gem, right? It's a best kept secret. We're doing our best to make that no longer the case. So we're trying to get out into the South Bend community, and you've got to come check it out. If you're looking for a college, if you're looking for a master's degree, if you're looking for even to take classes for your son or daughter that are going to integrate faith, that are going to have academic rigor, and they're going to push them to the next step, and that you can trust the people that are behind what's going on, look no further than Bethel University. And I'm thrilled to be able to, honestly, like even still getting called president is just discombobulating. I'm just like, how did this happen? Right. Because in my head, I'm just D, and I'm probably 20 in my head, maybe at best, So I'm like, man, I've got still so much to learn, and I've got so much that I want to do yet. And my goal, and I told Dr. Belfi this as I took over, but my goal is to get Bethel through their centennial in 2047, because I think there's power in that. And I witnessed my dad stay at the same church for 35 years. He's a pastor. And there's just such incredible power to that with staying and being faithful to what you've been called to do, and just day after day, just taking another step and another step. So my daughter, I'll wrap up with this because I could go on and on. My daughter asked me for a quote earlier this year, and it's actually what we've used for my social media, for the President social media too, that we just launched here at Bethel. So check it out. We're gonna do some super fun videos. We did for my inauguration day, we did a Frozen spoof. It's Coronation Day. Yeah. And so we went through that. We're gonna have a lot of fun. And I'm getting the students together and saying, what should we do? This should be fun. It should be engaging. Yeah. We want high school students and our current students to actually like really enjoy it, right? Yeah. And I'm not above that. So, but my daughter asked me, what's your favorite quote? And I'm not sure where this came from. I'm not sure who said it or whatever. But my favorite quote is, love God, love people, and use words if necessary. And so that's what I would leave you with today, right? The path less traveled. You don't have to cram it down people's throats. But if you love God, if you love people, you a lot of times don't even have to tell them. They notice that there's something hopefully worthwhile and that draws you to both God and to engage with other people.
What a way to close this out. I wear 3 bracelets. One of them says, love God, love others. So spot on. I want to thank you for doing this. This was an incredible conversation, great depth on the topic of leadership, and then also just your transition here and what's exciting that's happening here, but the things that, you and your family, I'm not going to use the word sacrifice, but just the changes that are happening. I appreciate you just sharing a glimpse into that for the listeners. Well, that's it for this week's episode of the Path Less Traveled podcast with the President of Bethel University, Dr. Dee McDonald. Thank you again.
Thanks so much, Craig.